Do you find yourself struggling to make ends meet after paying your rent? You're not alone. According to experts, the advice for renters to not spend more than 30% of their income on housing is increasingly unrealistic. In fact, tenants are often spending 40% or more of their income on housing, and nearly 15 million renter households in the US are considered cost-burdened, meaning they're spending more than 30% of their income on rent and utilities. The situation is especially dire in some cities, such as New York, where a household with the area's median income would need to pay nearly 69% of their earnings to rent the average-priced apartment. This leaves little room for savings, retirement, family goals, and other debt obligations. As personal finance blogger and author Ramit Sethi explains, housing is the single biggest financial area where people get trapped. That's why it's crucial to follow general guidelines when deciding how much you can afford. But don't worry, you don't have to figure it out alone. Mark Hummel, a licensed real estate salesperson at Douglas Elliman in New York, suggests taking into account vacancy rates, current rents, and your own budget when determining your housing budget. While the old 30% guideline may no longer be realistic, there are still ways to ensure you're not spending more than you can afford on rent. Your home should be your sanctuary, but what if the cost of your sanctuary is a financial burden? According to Andrew Orend, Senior Vice President of Research at the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, renters used to be advised to spend even less than 30% of their income on housing. In fact, back in 1969, the Housing and Urban Development Act required public housing residents to contribute just 25% of their earnings towards rent. Orend explains that this guideline came about during the Great Depression when a popular rule of thumb was a week's pay for a month's rent. However, today, with rising rents and low vacancy rates, the 30% rule is becoming increasingly unrealistic for many renters. Determining what percentage of your income should go towards rent can be a complex process that depends on various factors. For instance, a married couple without children might be able to allocate more of their income towards rent compared to a couple with kids and the same income. Orend suggests one simple way to measure if your housing costs are affordable. Calculate how much of your income remains after paying for rent and utilities. If the amount left over is inadequate to cover other bills and expenses, then you might be considered cost-burdened. And, unfortunately, you're not alone. Nearly 15 million renter households in the US spend more than 30% of their income on rent and utilities, according to research by the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard University. So before signing a lease, it's crucial to calculate how much rent you can afford and stick to your budget, ensuring your dream home doesn't turn into a financial nightmare. The key is to create a detailed budget that takes into account all of your expenses, including what you'd like to save or invest. This will help you determine how much you can realistically afford to spend on housing costs. As Andrew Orend, Senior Vice President of Research at the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, notes, it's also important to consider whether you have enough income left over after paying for housing to cover your non-housing expenses. This means taking a holistic approach to your finances and considering the big picture. At the end of the day, finding an affordable rent can be challenging, especially in expensive cities. But, as financial expert Ramit Sethi reminds us, we can't throw our hands up and give in to the high cost of living. Instead, we need to develop a real strategy for handling it. Sethi recommends aiming to spend no more than 28% of your gross income on rent, although he acknowledges that in certain expensive cities, it may be necessary to stretch that number to 30%, 32%, or even 35%. Just remember, anything above that puts you at serious risk if you were to lose your job or experience another setback. So, take the time to develop a budget that works for you and be mindful of the risks involved in stretching beyond your means. With a little bit of planning and discipline, you can find a rent that fits your budget and allows you to live comfortably. Thank you for taking the time to watch and learn more about the factors that should determine how much of your income you should spend on housing. As you can see, there is no hard and fast rule, and it's important to consider your individual circumstances and budget to make the right decision. If you found this information helpful, and you want to learn more about building wealth and improving your financial situation, then be sure to subscribe to the Wealth Builders YouTube channel. You'll gain access to a wealth of knowledge and insights that can help you make better decisions and achieve your financial goals. So don't wait any longer, hit that subscribe button now and start your journey towards financial success today.